Well, we're finding a lot at the moment, talking to customers, obviously like all over the news, but a lot of talk around recession. So a lot of people in recruitment starting to, ask a lot of questions around it and start to potentially look at how it's going to affect them, looking at their tech stack or the decline in jobs or work that they're going to be working on. So just wanting to cover a few bits really and just sort of see, perhaps what the discussions are, what you're hearing within the market, but, whether there's solutions and things that can help as well. Is it something you've considered or thought about, obviously specifically, running a recruitment desk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly some of the markets that we operate in, we're starting to see early indications and early signs that people are pulling back slightly. There's a bit of a return to normality, perhaps after a huge job rush over the last 12 months. Let's say it's fairly well publicised in the news that some of the large fintech companies globally have started making some fairly aggressive redundancies and cutting costs as potentially an early indication of what they're seeing in the future as well. But for sure, there's a little bit of uncertainty. Particularly, you look at inflation in the UK and where that's heading, and how that's actually being impacted globally as well. There's certainly some talk starting to emerge. People asking our thoughts on the market. What are their competitors doing? How buoyant is it? How competitive is it? What's the candidate flow like? So there's the early indications for sure that people are starting to be a little bit concerned of an impending recession.
What have you heard from clients as well in terms of, I suppose, retention of staff? Is there much of an interest around that, perhaps where people have maybe over-egged hiring in the last couple of months?
Yeah, for sure. So a customer of ours, I think we worked extensively with last year, placing around 40 people with them. They're certainly in that boat. They're perhaps overhired in certain areas, looking at new product releases that have almost been put on hold, leaving them a surplus of staff. So they've made some cuts. I think the long term, that particular customer will be fine. In fact, I'm sure they will be, and I'm sure they'll return to hiring once the next funding round's in. But yeah, certainly cost-cutting exercises, a refocus on what kind of products they're looking to release and take to the market, and also their international expansion as well. What is a good investment? What isn't? We had it the other day when an organisation that we deal with that's based out of Asia was looking to set up and establish in the UK. They've actually put those plans on hold for the time being, purely based on the uncertainty that they're seeing in the market, particularly within the UK, and I guess across the globe as a whole. They've actually paused that expansion project. We've seen that a couple of times over the last 6 weeks. Certain industries like the crypto industry, which we work in a fair amount, have certainly started to become a lot more considered on hiring plans, who they're looking at hiring, when they're looking at hiring them. 3 of our customers have paused certain levels of recruitment, not just in the UK, in the European Union as well, just while they wait and see really how things are going to pan out over the next few months.
I think there were some really interesting bits and something I hear a lot throughout my team and everything else, but a lot of recruiters just saying, I'm fine actually, I don't want to work on or look at getting on any new roles or any new business. I'm up to my ears and I can't deal with it. But a lot of my kind of thoughts around it is actually, how well do you know those clients? Are you actually understanding that, put those expansion plans, the new tech projects and things like that, are they actually aware that those projects are being put on hold? Obviously with the thought of freezing hiring, anticipating for a recession, and actually then that's the longer term impact. What we're certainly trying to do at the moment is more of that education with clients that, actually where people are thinking, recession may hit sort of end of October, November time, they actually need to start planning for that right now. That's where they're going to be able to kind of maximize their opportunities throughout that time, whereas I think a lot of people are going to leave it too late.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. I think whenever a recession hits, there's still businesses that are doing very, very well. and that are still hiring. It's what's key is making sure that your customer base has those organisations within it that I guess you're as well protected as you can be from any impending recession. It's certainly for me, any recruiters that are sat there resting on their laurels slightly, oh, this customer's been great for me for the last 2 years, I'm sure they're going to be fine, probably going to be in for a bit of a rude awakening, and actually identifying those organisations that are robust, that are either well funded or have, I guess, operate in markets that are going to be less effective. So if you life sciences, pharmaceuticals, those kind of businesses that are a little bit more resilient to a recession, because the need always remains. I think some of the work that we do around financial crime and compliance, again, it's a little bit more resistant to recession because it's heavily regulated. The banks, the financial services organisations, they have to get their compliance right. It's not an option for them to not do that. So you may see shifts in hiring patterns away from perhaps less permanent to more contract focused or short-term projects, just to get things delivered and done where they have to ensure that they're compliant. But those kind of markets, and ensuring that you've got good relationships, well networked within them, and that you've got your ear to the ground and understand, who could potentially need your services, is really important.
Yeah, I think, on that, it's about, for a lot of recruiters, perhaps if they are dealing within those more affected spaces, it's about working, smarter and, actually thinking, okay, where is it that's not going to be affected, as you said, like more around the regulated spaces. It's something that's hugely growing. Certainly in the US, there's a lot of clients that we're working with that are moving into that space. But yeah, I think where people often forget as well is, in the depths of a recession, it's about knowing where to look. There are still, businesses growing. There are still people expanding, still getting funding, but it's where and within the right sectors, or identifying the right businesses. I think even, during the last major recession in 2009, the likes of, Square, Groupon, Uber, Airbnb, they were all born out of a recession. So the opportunities are there, but it's knowing where to look and how to find them.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the last recession. Well, actually, I was working for a different business at the time, but we certainly got impacted in the short term by that recession, but we were able to pivot relatively quickly and started working internationally. Was for the one part, for example. So we started working out in the Middle East, did a fair amount of work out of there. They'd been less impacted by that recession. There was still lots going on out there. It took a little bit of time. Perhaps we weren't prepared early enough, but actually pivoting the business, the companies that we were dealing with, and the locations that we were dealing with really helped us out. On top of that, I guess there was more of a pivot towards contract recruitment rather than permanent, because the instability, because businesses didn't know what the future held. Still, projects have got to be delivered. We did relatively well from a contract perspective within those regulated industries. So it's just being smart about where you can actually take your time and your effort and your energy, that you're going to get the biggest return out of.
It is specifically within that, and you said, it's working smart, finding the niche areas where it is going to propel. I often hear a lot of people as well, like I think on the point we said earlier around saying, oh, I've got my clients and, they're absolutely fine. Probably a anticipation, and where I think, being very candidate light, over the last few months is, actually businesses or, internal TA teams have had huge PSLs, loads of people on them, because they're trying to spread their net and find the best talent out there. Whereas in candidate light, I think there's going to be huge reviews around that in terms of stripping those back, and a lot of recruiters are going to find a lot of their clients are starting to disappear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I certainly experienced that the last time around. So we at Hamlin Williams, we tend not to try and work on large PSLs. It's always a case of, look, try and get that work exclusively, partner with your clients as best as you can, to give them the best possible service. But inevitably, in a candidate short market, lots of businesses, you're absolutely right, they don't want to just rely on one source of candidate generation. I think as that market expands and the availability of candidates increases significantly, like we saw 13 years ago, actually the way you operate as a recruiter needs to change as well. It's no longer a case of, you find your gem of a candidate that you're able to place. It's you become far more beneficial to your customers in saving them time. They can't cope with the amount of people that are trying to apply for roles. I think certainly in the sectors that we operate in, there's, even with a recession, there's still an element of a candidate shortage in certain roles. Not in all at all, but you get a bit of a stabilization for the market. And certainly when you look at software engineering or some of the more technical aspects of what we do, those candidates remain in demand, and there's still not a surplus of them. Let's suggest it's just about, again, identifying the right businesses that are hiring, that are looking for great talent, and really having that data and that information is key.
I think there's always going to be a shortage in tech, certainly for the next few years ahead anyway, due to skill shortages. But so yeah, you're always fighting candidate light there. I think, where people perhaps not as prepared for it is, thinking if a recession does hit, then, it's often kind of sales, marketing, finance that are immediately impacted by that, if businesses are making job cuts. And I think those are perhaps the sectors that are, really going to see that massive downturn straight away in terms of job flow. But also I think, on the other side of it is more around the fee side as well. I think where it's been so candidate light, recruitment agencies, businesses, they've really been able to demand, or certainly, holding the keys, if you like, in terms of what they're going to charge to clients, purely because of how candidate light and how hard it's been. But I imagine there's certainly going to be a big shift in that. Is that something you've seen already, or? Not
yet in our industries necessarily. I think there are customers are certainly becoming more cautious about their spend. I think the processes are perhaps becoming a little bit elongated because businesses want to make sure that they're absolutely certain that they've got it right. The availability of money for them to spend on recruiters hasn't really been impacted just yet. It will inevitably, and businesses will look to renegotiate their terms. Absolutely sure that will happen. But yeah, we haven't seen it just yet, but I'm sure it will be coming over the next few months.
I think there's the flip side as well. As speaking to some recruiters a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking around counter offers at the moment just being absolutely crazy for candidates, and quite often they think that candidates are trying to find a new role purely to help them with that negotiation on salary for a counter offer. Yeah. But I think, perhaps what candidates who aren't going to be so aware in terms of understanding what's going on in the market and how it's changing necessarily, but actually looking at that, negotiations on salaries are probably going to become, much more harder, purely because of, that consciousness, I suppose, around the spend within business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think last time, certainly for sure, when the recession hit, companies almost felt it was almost that they had the reassurance that actually there's loads of people out there, so I don't have to necessarily pay market rates. I can try and get someone for slightly less to save some money. I think what's really important is that they're very, very careful around that, because sooner or later you start coming out of the recession and another business will take those underpaid candidates immediately. So there was, yes, for sure we saw that salaries were impacted. There were pay freezes, people weren't getting their increases, promotions perhaps slowed as well for people internally. But But yeah, I think you find the right business that looks after their people, pays them what they're worth as opposed to what they can get them for. Otherwise, inevitably they're going to lose them sooner or later.
I suppose with all of this now, obviously, I know you said like you were there. Remember the last recession and everything like that. And like, what was it you'd look out for if you were obviously a recruitment leader as you are? But what are the key signs that kind of start ringing alarm bells for you?
I think the first and foremost, you start looking at it when you're seeing in the news the redundancies that are happening. You're starting to see that your job flow across your team is perhaps getting slightly lighter than it was to. As soon as that starts happening with a level of consistency, you need to look at, okay, look, is this something that we're doing, or is this a fair reflection of the market? So talking to our customers, getting their insights, finding out what they're seeing is happening within their specific piece of the market is really, really important. Strangely, when you start getting candidates applying for jobs and you get a lot more candidate flow coming through, that's always an indication that the market's turning as well. I think right now candidate applications aren't overly high and haven't been for the last 12 months. It's very much a proactive search on our behalf to go and find the right people that are out there, but they've just been approached so much that they don't have the need to send in applications. I think once you start seeing a significant increase in candidate applications and a drop off in jobs, it's pretty clear by that stage that there's likely a recession that's very, very close to hand.
I think something we've heard as well I know has probably infuriated quite a lot of people is job boards seriously increasing their prices as well. They've gone through the roof, but from my side, I actually think they've been very, very clever because they know what's coming, and they've put up their prices. People are going to drop off, but actually, when the market flips and candidates are everywhere looking for roles, they know where the candidates are going to go, and agencies at the end of the day, they're going to need to go back to the job boards. By which time they've seriously increased their prices. I don't know if that's something you probably agree with, or.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's quite poignant that you mentioned it. Really, we were just in the process of renegotiating with one of our suppliers, and looking at others. I think in that sense, whenever you make an investment as a recruitment business, whether that be in a piece of technology, a job board, something that helps you to generate candidates or clients, you've just got to understand what's best fit for your market, what's going to give you either the data and the information and customers or the candidates that you need, that you're going to be able to fulfill requirements for your customers for. So something we're doing at the moment is looking at our ROI on all of our spend across our stack. In the last recession, we actually invested more in the platforms that gave us the greatest ROI. Some of the job boards, they did get cut because you've got to make, I guess, some concessions on your spend if you're going into a recession to future-proof the business, but actually invested into those tools that are really important is unlikely to be impacted. I think certainly from my point of view, the job boards that we get a great return from, we're absolutely going to keep, even though the prices have gone up. The other tools that we utilize that we need, that we use regularly, that we've got demonstrable ROI from our investment, it's really easy to look at that and say, okay, well, look, we're going to continue our investment here. We're going to continue our investment in job board X because we know we're going to get the return from it. We know that that's where our candidates are going to be. And without it, you're going to miss out to your competitors. So, yeah, it's a real balancing act between making sure that you're investing in the right platforms, the right technologies, the right tools that are going to benefit your business, really.
Is there perhaps, I mean, a slight little pivot as well, but something that I thought of in terms of recruitment staff as well. I'm guessing with, where it has been so, job heavy, if you like, and fluent within that, is there an element where perhaps a lot of recruiters that have perhaps been in the role for, let's say, the last 18 months, where they haven't had to do any BD? So do you think that's going to be quite a shock to a lot of people at desk?
Potentially, yeah. I certainly think that that those that are at the earlier stages of their recruitment career, when a recession comes in, it is quite a shock to the system. I think from my experience, I was kind of 4 years into recruitment when the 2009 recession hit. So by then you're a little bit more established. You know what you're doing. You've got a good customer base. You know, you've got a good candidate network. I think when a recession hits, for those that are early on in recruitment, yeah, it can be a huge shock to the system. And also it perhaps something that they go from really enjoying and being very successful at to it's a totally different role when the market pivots. And actually not everybody has the skill set to be able to flip between those changing market conditions. So generally what you'll see is a lot of people exiting the recruitment industry when a recession hits. At the moment, it's so buoyant. Everybody's hiring. Everyone's looking for good talent. I think there'll be, certainly for us as a business, there'll be a greater availability of good recruiters when that recession does hit. And it's about looking at, okay, what industries are being really affected? Where can I go and pick up a great recruiter and just teach them about our industry? Just move them across. They know the fundamentals. They know how to recruit. They know how to build a relationship. They know how to win a new customer. They know how to find good candidates. It's just pivoting their market, bringing them into a market that's a little bit more resilient to that recession. Something that's worked really well in the past is that cross-training element. Bringing people in for construction, for example, could be hugely affected by a recession. There's some great recruiters there that you can go and find and pick up and train up into, a more regulated industry. So opportunities, I guess, and threats on both sides, depending on where you sit.
That's very, I know you mentioned it earlier in terms of investing in tech during the last one. Is that something, you've considered, I suppose, if you're expecting some churn of staff and a downgrading in terms of the number of jobs that everybody's going to be working on? Is it something that looking at new tech to help support that and make things more efficient? Is that something that you've considered, or you think others should?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think you've always got to be open-minded in the industry in which we operate in. There's new technologies emerging all the time that make your jobs easier, that give you information that you're not necessarily privy to, give you access to candidates that you wouldn't necessarily find elsewhere. I think if you don't consider new technologies and how they can benefit your business, you're going to stand still. And if you start standing still in a recession, you end up going backwards really, really quickly. So it's about what are those products? What is that technology that's going to be a differentiator for you? That's going to make sure that not just give you the ability to find new customers and new clients, but actually give you that insight into the industry as a whole. And where do I need to be operating? What do I need to be looking at? What's the data? What's the information telling me about my industry that's going to help me make sure that we're successful throughout a recession?
I mean, a lot of what we're trying to do and doing within the market very well across Europe and the US is helping businesses almost find out all the information they need. So, the background on that business, who's in there, what's the probability of them going through new funding rounds, where are they going to be hiring within what departments. It's all about actually gearing people up ahead of that, giving them some advantage based off, news and things that are happening specifically within that business. It's a lot of education. That what we're trying to do with clients now is say, look, the tools are there. We've got the information that typically is going to take you hours and hours to find. I mean, speaking from experience at a recruitment desk, but what we're doing is allowing consultants to come into their desk in the morning and having everything they need. They've everything's planned out in front of them, who they need to call, when, why. It's all there in front of them. That's a lot of education which we're trying to do with clients at the moment. Is we know this is going to happen. There's a lot of talk about it. We've got everything in the press, as we mentioned, with like inflation rates and everything. It's going to happen. We've got an anticipation of when. It's about planning. But I think people are thinking, oh, it's end of the year, it's fine. It's fine. Well, we're halfway through the year already now, and actually it's only 3 months away. So there's a lot of that planning and starting to think, get some tools, get some different systems into the workplace, into consultants' workflow now. So actually, when the time does come, they're proficient, they're on time, and they're understanding what their day looks like, with identifying, finding new opportunities that they wouldn't have found elsewhere.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think with anything new that you bring into the business, there's an onboarding time. There's a time that it takes to really get the most out of that product, and to get your team or your recruiters into the habit and the rhythm of using it consistently, understanding how to interpret that data. Okay, so what are the triggers within my industry that means people are going to be hiring? You mentioned funding rounds. So for us, tracking funding rounds is really important, certainly within the fintech team, because heavily funded industry. It's for us, it's all about identifying, okay, so some of our traditional clients that we've done really, really well with over the last couple of years have started to make cuts or have put a freeze on hiring. There's still money being invested into that market, and there will continue to be. So the private equity organisations and the venture capitalists will continue to invest into fintech organisations. We've just got to be ahead of the game in finding out who's investing where, and make sure that actually that we're targeting those businesses at the right time to help and support them through their growth. And we're pretty lucky in the sense that we operate across Europe within that fintech market. So if the UK takes a hit, but there's other areas of the European Union that are a little bit more robust, we've still got footprints in those areas. We can still pivot and shift our focus slightly into those organisations that are being well funded and that are growing aggressively.
I was speaking to somebody actually a couple of weeks ago where they've said they'd only deal within such a niche area. It was beyond belief, and it was more around our conversation in terms of, look, we've got a product here that can help you literally expand any way you want. So okay, you want to spread to Germany, you want to spread to France, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Here are the jobs, here are the opportunities to go after. This is based on the AI behind our product, and where these companies are going to be hiring in terms of departments based off certain bits of news. You've got everything already there to expand into a territory, but then you've also got the hiring manager's contact details to get in touch. More importantly, you've then got a massive pool of candidates that are ready and available for you to contact and reach out to. You're not trying to build a desk from scratch or from cold. You've got everything you need in one place. And actually that conversation with that individual, they were like, oh, actually that kind of makes my life a lot easier. And we've done a lot with as well, companies within the UK expanded into the US territories and things like that. But I think people really need to start being a lot more open to the idea that perhaps within their very little niche towns, cities, whatever it may be, that actually, they are going to have to expand and look elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I mentioned earlier, we in a previous role I had, we started looking at the Middle East as a market that actually really made a difference in the last recession, because the hiring wasn't impacted anywhere near as severely. Look, it was still a specific market. It was still, you're still looking at highly technical people, but yeah, you open up a new region and it can make such a difference to you. Back in the day, you didn't have the availability of candidate pools there ready to go out, to be fair. So it's a little bit more time consuming trying to build up those networks in new areas. I think anything that allows you to do that faster in a recession is going to benefit you. Because actually the time to hire can be a real challenge for recruiters and for their companies. So anything that you can do to shorten that time to hire is something you need to be looking at, really.
Yeah, I think a key word that we keep hearing as well at the moment is all around automation, and whether it's making consultants more efficient on desk with inbound leads coming in, or keeping in touch with I suppose the niche pool of candidates that ultimately they know are going to make them money. Is a key word that we keep hearing at the moment. I mean, from our side, we offer a end-to-end automation and stuff that we know others can't do on the market. But is that I suppose from your side, how that automation fits into a workflow? I'm guessing that would be obviously really important, but hopefully obviously increase the efficiency of the team as well.
Yeah, and look, absolutely, of course. I think the beauty of recruitment is that, look, I've been working in it for 17 years now, constantly hear people saying, "Our recruitment will die at some point." I really don't think it will. I think what will happen is technology will just allow good recruiters to do a better job in a shorter period of time and actually give their clients far more return on their investment than perhaps those that aren't using the new automation technology that's available out there in the market.